we have 10 minutes left. I don't think I will be able to cover all the details in the slides, but I do aim to go through this relatively quickly. And again, every thing is online. I'm sure if you want to get into it, you have a lot of the opportunities after the class as well. So I just would love to share some of the reflections after you guys have learning making and controlling of pneumatic airbags for 2 labs. And we put so much effort and time also because, as I mentioned, it's one of the most popular techniques in the field of morphing systems and soft robotics, and it's getting very matured nowadays. So it actually can be practical, even thinking of your thesis and actuating larger, smaller structures across different scales. So now I bring this up, I think you guys all can associate a little bit. So in the class, we ask you to seal a diamond looking hinges, right? So this paper led by Jifei, who was a former colleague from MIT Media Lab, actually talk about the geometrical pattern of this diamond. Basically, the angle of this diamond can dictate the maximum bending curvature. So now we're talking a little bit about programmability, and this assumption is that you are fabricating your airbag perfectly. Then the angle of the diamond can really tell you how much you can bend. No matter how much air you pump in, as long as you don't burst it, it'll follow this rule. And also, just to show you some even more sophisticated and complicated air structure that are based on the geometrical principle Luca introduced in the making lab. So you can, for example, even self-assemble a very complicated multi-cubic combination. And also in terms of materials. So some students approached me asking whether this can be used for fashion project. And we use pretty cheap plastic bags we buy online. That's partially accommodating the 30 students lab session, but also partially that is one of the easiest to get our hands on. However, you definitely have a chance to pretty much leverage the same principle, but thinking about inflating papers or fabric. Some of you guys may ask, hey, they are not airtight. How can I inflate those alternative materials? So the idea is, again, so I'm kind of, most of the slides are based on the single paper that Jifei led in the past. So you can definitely check the paper. But the general idea is you have a thermoplastic layer. It's a thermopolyurethane. It's very thin. It's also thermal bonding material for clothes brand like Nike, right? They don't want to have any, they call it what? Seamless sewing, seamless joints. I forgot the name, but it basically means you don't get it on a sewing machine. You basically have a thermoplastic that was sandwiched by 2 layers of fabric, and then you thermally bond it. So you get a very nice looking. So this is the kind of thermoplastic we're discussing. If you get it laminated, thermally laminated to a piece of fabric or to a piece of paper, suddenly your fabric and paper can be used with this inflatable technique. You can then broaden the context of the applications that's to do with specific materiality. And this is the TPU material I'm talking about. And you perhaps all have used it before. Some of the inflatable, a bed or outdoor bath is actually made of this material because they are, again, airtight. They are also a very industrially available thermoplastic. They're even a bit more environmentally beneficial than some other thermoplastic like PET. And I attach a link where basically you can buy this TPU material, but you can also get maybe less professional, less quantified ones in other more casual sources as well. This is a professional supply from California. We use it a lot. And then I also want to briefly talk about manufacturing method. So some of you, actually the majority of you, I want to say 90% of you guys got pretty decent fabrication result at the end with the technique Luca introduced. That's the easiest and most accessible method, which is using a soldering tip, right? Just choose the right tip type and then you can get a good sealing. So, but some get frustrated. They ask, what if I want to also fabricate some very sophisticated patterns I saw online? And that's very tricky to do with hand. So that's when you, so if you are thinking of using this technique to do a thesis project, for example, with more sophisticated controllability, that's when you may want to start think about mounting this soldering tip on a gantry. So here it's an example of showing how a CNC gantry could hold the heating tip, and then from there you can create more complicated patterns. So the other approach, which is depends on who you are, of course, what's your background, which is likely more accessible to the majority of you guys, is this machine called basically a heat sealer. And you can easily get it from Amazon, because in the kitchen, people use it a lot to basically preserve food in a plastic bag. So for these, you can also seal airbags in straight lines. So the limitation is always come with the straight lines, right? But you can already do quite a lot. So for example, on the left hand, an airbag of this type, sealing all the 4 edges and also introduce some parallel lines in the middle to control the bending angle. These were easily done by this method. And you can definitely get very controllable, precise, smooth, straight lines of sealing. So this was almost 10 years ago. I conducted a workshop in Tokyo with actually elementary school kids. This video I'm showing here actually shows the air sealing process I'm talking about. So I also used a soldering tip to poke a hole. And then you can super glue like a little proper connector on top. Instead of using hot glue, you can now do a little bit more decent job on the connector side as well. So you see I'm using like a metallic screw, so I can just screw it on, so everything becomes more neat. And then you can mass produce it. So for the workshop, we actually prepared a lot of those actuators. So the idea is they become like a inflatable tape. You can peel off the backing layer and attach it to another geometrical structure, in this case, some paper sheets, to create interesting shapes. And this comes as a little toolkit. So in the workshop, we actually asked the kids to think about some wearable stuff. You know, they can make a bunny ear that can bend, or a tail. It's a little bit maybe too naive for you guys to think about such playful things, but you are definitely very welcome to think about educational toolkits or augmented body in gaming, for example, or playful context. So the other method, this one also came from a question our class asked me. A student was trying to do some sophisticated circular shape, and she asked whether there's a better way to do it. So this is an option if you don't get a CNC machine to hook on a heating tips, right? This is a mold made of metal. And then you just kind of press this on top of 2 layers of airbag, and then use a heat press to introduce heat. This is a little bit more sophisticated, but we actually in the lab have the heat bag. Sorry, the heat, it's called heat press. So if you guys are interested in thinking more complicated geometries, please email me, and I can try to provide some extra information or machines to use, etc. Also, I want to just highlight again, I mentioned this in the last lab, but just mention it again because we didn't get to practice this, but I can't emphasize how interesting this is. So basically you have the circuit. If you just simply switch your inflation and vacuum line, you could use it as a degassing control circuitry as well. Then you can do interesting things like a volumetric shrinkage and also stiffness changing. So I believe Luca was trying to show this demo in class. The same airbag, put 30 layers of sandpaper inside, and then if you vacuum the air out, this structure becomes really stiff. So in the slide deck, I showed basically a few examples of how this jamming can be utilized. if you guys all remember in my class 1, I mentioned you can use it to automatically tightening a shoelace, right? This video, again, led by Jifei, but I was also part of the team. So we were trying to make, like a carpet turns into a hard chair. When you are on a picnic, you can easily pack a rollable carpet in the back of your car. And then later you can vacuum it into a stiff chair to use in a picnic. So it's a very fun video. I definitely encourage you guys to check the entire footage. And also, if you're interested in the principle, how jamming works, you can also check the paper. It's very simple. It's literally decided by the friction between layers. And you can do volumetric shape with jamming too. So, coffee trapped in an airbag, in a balloon, if you vacuum the air out, it becomes stiff. And roboticists use this as conformable grippers. If you basically, when it's, you all experience this, right? When you open a bag of vacuum coffee, you suddenly feel the bag become softer. So here they basically inflate the air to get conformability, then they vacuum the air out to grab some objects. So this is a really classic project a couple of years ago, great invention. Definitely check the long videos if you're interested. And people do creative use of the jamming. You can fix shapes, basically do reconfigurable shaping for products and furniture. And this one, what they injected is not sandpaper, not coffee, but some of the, I believe, yellow-green beans. So they can do more interesting surface textures when the air is vacuumed. So I'll stop here. Again, all the slides are available online. Feel free to be inspired. So I'll see most of you guys in the lab session on Thursday. And please feel free to reach me out for any questions, any help you need, any accommodations you need. Thank you, guys.